Hey Scorpio, my name is Vincent and this is a reading for all the Scorpio placements out there. Now, I've been using the same deck for most of the readings that I've done over the last few weeks for the different zodiac signs. The Taro Yawali Ehikak by Mi Corazon Mexica. It's a beautiful deck, but for Virgo's reading, I actually felt inclined to use the Thoth deck. And I can't really quantify the reason behind that. It just felt like it fit with where Virgo is at energetically right now. But I actually feel inclined to use it again for your reading. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that your traditional ruler Mars is currently transiting through the sign of Virgo. So I feel like you and Virgo are kind of on the same wavelength on some level. I was kind of thinking of it as like the two of you are riding on the same train. You know, you're having totally distinct conversations with totally different groups of people, but the end destination is the same. And obviously, whatever you guys end up doing once you get to that destination is probably going to be divergent and different from one another, but you're still kind of in a space of shared destiny in a way along this journey. And I actually attempted to do a reading already and totally missed something, so I had to stop the recording and start over. But the first card that I pulled for you already, and the first and only card that I've pulled, is actually the Nine of Discs, which just so happens to be the middle decan of Virgo, which is the same decan that Mars is currently transiting through at the time of me recording this. And I also kind of timed this reading out to have Mars rising on the ascendant where I'm recording and at the time I'm recording, just so you can kind of show up for your own reading, you know, you little fixed water Martians out there. So yeah, so when I saw that card, it was kind of like, yeah, Mars in Virgo definitely wants to be part of this conversation. It's going to be relevant for what's happening, and it also kind of confirmed for me that this is the right deck to use for this reading. Now, as I'm looking at this card, it's inclining me to mention that Mars typically does pretty well in the Earth triplicity because it gives Mars a very practical outlet for what otherwise can be very erratic and sharp and aggressive energy. It turns anger into activity, so that you're actually working the earth and making tangible change to your environment and to your life. And so I want you, if you know your birth chart, I want you to take a look at where the Earth trine, the Earth triplicity, the three Earth signs, where they fall in what houses in your chart. And try to maybe meditate on how Mars is activating and energizing those parts of your life at this moment. Because to me, it feels very much like you're focused on the money, you're focused on resources and assets, and that doesn't necessarily have to be money. You know, it can just be, again, like I said, the tangible assets, like things that you own, cars, houses, you know, it doesn't have to be physically directly money, but things that we hold value within, because I think that's very much what this decan is kind of talking about, especially with Venus being the ruler of this decan within Virgo. It's kind of like how we can work the earth to produce abundance for us. You know, if you think of Virgo as being kind of like the proverbial wheat field, you know, this decan is concerned with the actual harvest and the exchange of the goods that we've harvested within the framework of the market, like putting our assets up for sale. or making them available to others in order for us to exchange value in some way. And that can also be relevant for like the people that you're networking with right now. That can be a focus of yours, especially if you have Scorpio rising or if you have your moon in Scorpio. That Virgo is your 11th house, which is very much the house of networking, of friendships, and even of goals, of setting goals and goals that we sort of attempt to follow through with in order to make manifest within the 10th house. Because if you think it's above the 12th house, it's already risen over the horizon, but it's moving towards the 10th house of culmination of our outward expression of our purpose and destiny, our careers, if you want to see it that way. But I'm curious. Kind of a lot of information to get from one card, right? Okay, more Mars showing up for your own reading. We have the Emperor card, which obviously is Aries, but most especially is the planet Mars in a more noble state, as opposed to being like the Tower. This to me just feels very much like an underlining on the fact that Mars does typically do well within the Earth triplicity, because the energy is focused. The energy has an outlet, and a healthy outlet, something where we're not wallowing in the energy, we're not fuming, we're not throwing it every which direction. We have outlined goals, and we've charted out the steps, especially in the sign of Virgo, that we need to take in order to make something a reality. And I feel like you're undergoing that process right now. You're crossing out the things that you've completed, or crossing out the things that aren't necessarily required or in alignment with where it is that you're aiming towards. But I feel like it's a very good sort of energy. You feel very empowered to make decisions that that aren't going to waste your time, I guess is the way to put it. Like you're not dawdling, you're doing the work, and you're going somewhere. Like you're on that train. The train is moving. You obviously have time to enjoy yourself and to talk with friends and whatnot, but you're still going somewhere. You're still on the path to make your goal a reality. The harvest is on its way. Next card that came out is the Prince of Cups. This could represent you. Court cards of their element typically represent actual persons or characters or even aspects of yourself in a reading, and especially with this water element being emphasized, can be you, Scorpio, or it can be Pisces or Cancer. But this to me represents somebody who has begun the process of identifying the underlying sources of their desires. In this case, it's like you have identified the things that make you feel good, or that make you feel empowered in a way. I'm trying to think of how to word this. Kind of connecting back to what I was saying with the chart and with the list, it's like you have identified the things that feel most in alignment with who you are becoming. I feel like this is very forward-minded. It's not stagnating in the past or anything. Like you're feeling very goal-oriented. Like you have your eyes on a target and you're trying to aim for that. So everything in your thought process right now is within that context of trying to reach this bullseye. And so this Prince of Cups to me is sort of representing that process of identification of appropriate feelings, and maybe getting to the heart, like, how do I word this? Because it's kind of a concept that I've been thinking of in the last couple of weeks, where it's like we think that we want one thing, or we want a specific person or a specific job or a specific physical thing. But if we really sit with that feeling of desire and we kind of sift a little deeper and we go down to the root of where that desire is coming from, we can identify what it is that we actually want. And oftentimes it's not dependent upon or even connected to the thing that appears to be what we want. Does that make sense? And so this Prince of Cups to me sort of represents or is communicating that you have already started that process, and that this process is what is allowing you to be so productive in where you're putting your energy and your focus right now, because you're doing the inner work necessary to clean up the blinders that would otherwise present as obstacles on your path to reaching this goal. Like, I feel like your goal is very purified, it's very refined, it's very like single pointed, no compromise. Like, you're going there. And the reason it's so single pointed and clear to you is because you have undergone this work. And whether that's something that you have sort of initiated within yourself without being dependent upon other people, or if this is a figure that has kind of come into your life that is not necessarily coercing you, but like has provided some kind of experience for you that is helping you to think in this way. You know, and it's interesting in the spread, the way it's oriented. It's like Mars, you are kind of like looking over at this Prince of Cups. Like, this is where you're drawing your power from. You're focusing upon this process in order to be able to make appropriate decisions. This is like the advisor for the king, is kind of what I'm getting. You know, you've read the signs, you've identified the underlying emotional landscape, and that's the palette that you're using, you're drawing from. That's the palette that you're painting with. I hope that makes sense. We're gonna draw a couple more cards for you, Scorpio. But so far, I'm liking where your reading is going. Okay, so the next card that I pulled was the Nine of Swords. And the Nine of Swords is actually a Mars ruled decan, so again, more of that Mars emphasis sort of coming up for your reading. But Gemini is also a house for you that's getting activated as we speak, because both Venus and the slower moving outer planet Uranus have already passed into the sign of Gemini. And Uranus is going to be there for the next 8 years, give or take. So there's going to be sort of a change up to wherever Gemini falls in your chart. Now, if we're going to speak from Scorpio being on the ascendant in the first house, then Gemini would be in your 8th house, which is usually associated with things like shared resources, especially with one-on-one partnerships. Can also deal with such things as secrets or hidden things, the occult even, themes around death and longevity. And I'm trying to think, with this card kind of coming up and speaking on cruelty, it's making me think not necessarily themes of like exploitation. Right, this is a little strange. The way it's sort of communicating itself to me is through um, battles of inheritance, which is also an eighth house theme, of course, but I'm sure some of you, and I know I have experienced the loss of a family member, especially grandparents or our more advanced in years folks in the family. When they pass, there's a will, and then there's an executor of the will, and then things sort of get dispersed appropriately according to the will. But a lot of times it creates fractures in the family because one person wanted to get something else that the other person got, and then it explodes into this legal battle, and the legal battle like rips the family members apart, and oftentimes it's like irreparable. Like there's no way to sort of bring that fracture back together. So I'm trying to think like how this is manifesting for you. The way the spread is oriented right now, kind of like I was saying, Mars is looking over here at the Prince of Cups, but then right over here on the other side, the other shoulder, we have this Nine of Swords, this cruelty card. And it's sort of making me think that you, this martial figure, you're not focusing on those things. You're not focusing on the weak points, because you are aware that putting your energy there is just going to be a drain. And as I'm saying that, I'm specifically looking at these droplets of what appears to be blood on this card. It's like it's a drain to sit there and focus your energy on the places where the wounds are, or on the places that are more difficult and outside of your control. And so I think the term that's coming to mind is like the sublimation of your inner landscape is where you're drawing your power from. So instead of trying to draw your power on external influences, on situations that, again, you don't have control over, or at least situations that would require a tremendous amount of effort, with that Mars theme, effort, exertion, a tremendous amount of effort in order to reorient in your favor. You're focusing on what is within your control, that inner space, that inner landscape, the day-to-day decisions that you can make, the destinations that you can physically visit, or emotionally, spiritually visit, whatever. But I feel like it's very like rooted in the world right now with this card crowning the reading, and kind of where the theme has seemed to stick with. There's also an element of nobility here. By not engaging with whatever this is over here, there's a sort of retention of dignity. And I think that'll work in your favor in situations that will be arising in the near or distant future. By not engaging with and not sort of lowering yourself to the level of hurling insults and accusations and sword fighting unnecessarily, it will reflect better on your character, and you will appear to be more as somebody who is in control, who is perhaps more deserving of, I don't necessarily like to use that terminology, but as someone to whom whatever boons are incoming would be more appropriately received. I worded that so weird. But I think you kind of get the point. I'm going to draw another card for you, and then I think this will be the last card that we pull for the reading. But let's see where we're at. Okay. Five of Cups. First decan of Scorpio. More Mars, because it is a Mars ruled decan. Now, whenever I see this card in this particular deck, I think of alchemy. I think of the process of transmuting difficult situations into beautiful or delicious end results. Because if you think of the process of like distilling alcohol, you know, you have the raw materials and then you turn them into something that's purified and so much more potent than what was initially begun with. You know, even in terms of like essential oils, same process, similar process, I should say. But it's like drawing. It's so weird. Because it's connecting to this card over here. I'm seeing that. And it's like, I'm seeing other people. It's showing up for me as like an image of somebody like literally hurling insults at you or like trying to throw darts at you. And you're just like holding up a mirror and it's like bouncing off and going right back to the person that's sending it. And I feel like that's what this card is sort of representing in this moment. I'm hearing you have no use for the petty things. Like they don't serve a purpose. You're so practical right now. Your energy is so focused in the world and doing things that the less tangible sort of air element communications and insults and accusations and I'm hearing litigations, again maybe going back to some element of like legal battles or whatever. It's like it's not hitting you. You've wrapped yourself in the earth and it's sort of like an impenetrable fortress that this energy can't get through. It's just bouncing right off. And it's like I was saying, you retaining that dignity. It's like this process of transmuting these negative external influences into something that ultimately works in your favor. And I feel like that's kind of part of the medicine that Scorpio brings anyway. Like, I feel like you have a gift for transforming things, transforming the muck and the mire and the sewage of the cosmos into something that is powerful and useful and workable and focused. And I feel like as long as you stay stay focused on your end goal, on your target, and on where you're going, and you're maintaining whatever sort of process that's working out for you to get in touch with your inner reserves and your inner strengths, like everything else is going to sort of fall into place behind you. Like as you're walking, like I see like a cape trailing behind you, and like wherever the cape is landing, it's like it's combing the earth and leaving like a perfectly laid brick path in its wake where you're walking on like raw earth. Really strange imagery, but it's like you're ordering your cosmos, your individual world, and leaving something better in your wake because of the work that you're doing. And whatever these outside influences are, you know, they're not going to last. You know, they're made of air. Wispy little air. You know, air is so inconstant and so unreliable. You're working with elements that sustain themselves over grand periods of time. You're doing work that will have far-reaching, lasting results. And these are just going to, maybe leave a scratch or a dent here and there, but that's something that you can smooth over by virtue of the situations and the materials, so to speak, that you're working with. I'm also just getting a little interested in a sort of underlying almost symmetry between these two cards. They're obviously very different cards, but there's a quality that they seem to share. And I feel like that's, again, communicating what I was saying about sort of harnessing these negative or what would be weakening situations or feelings and sort of transmuting them for your own personal benefit and gain. Well, with that, Scorpio, I think I will leave it at that. Wishing you all the best. I hope this reading provided a little bit of externalization for you to help you process what it is that you're navigating. And I'd love to hear your stories and hear about the train ride that you're on with the Virgos. But yeah, wish you all the best. Take care of yourselves, and best of luck.